Okay, so then perfect. Let me record it. Okay.
Natasha, the recording has a nice effect. It makes us try to say smart stuff on the video, you know? So.
Imagine that. Well, you know, as I mentioned, this is just a space for us to kind of learn. All of us here are practitioners, and we're in this journey, which also is important to point out, because that means that feel free to destroy whatever here you don't agree with. Literally, we're here to learn, okay? We're learners in this community, so no problem at all. Let me share then first my screen here, so we kind of like get a sense of what is it that we're having in the agenda today. So I have optimized also the ordering, because I know that some of you likes to see the structure first, and some of you also like for us to keep it a little bit spontaneous. So we will have both things, okay? So what do we have in the agenda? So first, as I mentioned, we will have a chance to have a proper check-in by yourself. Don't worry, we will do it through Mentimeter in just seconds. And then we will be overviewing kind of those expectations that you have for the session today and from the community. So we make sure that you get that out of the session. And then we will go very briefly into kind of like some tools and practices that we can use, you know, as practitioners when we're working with our product backlog. And then finally, we will do the checkout, and hopefully at the end of the checkout, you have some ideas, some questions, and some new meaningful connections, okay? So that's what we will be striving for. I'm extremely grateful to have you this afternoon. I know all of you are very busy professionals striving, okay? So the first thing that I will do also is share the link to today's presentation, okay? So I will copy the link and I will post it here in the chat for you, okay? And those of you that are in your phones, don't worry, you will be able to kind of have the following link also in the open bar. As you can see, it says www.menti.com, and it also says a code. That code can allow you to access the presentation as we do it live, okay? So I see some of you are already there. That's great to know. I will just in case share it here for you so you don't have to write it down, okay? So let's do this here for you. Once again, this is the link, and then if you use this code, it will allow you immediately also to access the interactive presentation, okay? So awesome. So some of you are already there. I will double check also. I have here my phone just to make sure that there's no problem there. As the team members enter also, I will make sure to remind them of this link and of the code for this session, okay? So I see already many of you are there. That's awesome. So let's see here. Great, so I'm here with you too. Okay, so this is just trying to make it interactive. Also, feel free as we are going through the workshop, if we want a little comfort break, yes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the middle for us to grab a coffee, or also have a chat in a room with other team members. I can break you into rooms so you can have your chat or your coffee in the middle, yeah? So please, as you need maybe the comfort break, maybe in 30 minutes or so, do let me know. I'll check in with you and we can do that, okay? Super, let's kick it off, people. So we have here today the topic of the year, that is, you know, what are we going to do with our product backlogs? And this actually emerged in one of the meetups as a key challenge that we face as practitioners. So we said, okay, let's see if we can tackle it very briefly in a session, because of course it's a complex issue. And here we are. We're here today trying to you know, have some time, dedicated time to think about this. Some of you might be product owners, or might be Scrum masters, or might be members of the development team, and you know that the product backlog is kind of like one of the main things that kicks everything, right? It's one of the most important artifacts, right? So the first question that I have for you is, of course, how are you feeling as you enter today's session? Hopefully everything is going good for you. If not, feel free there to share it. It's very crazy times, the pandemic. And so, yeah, let's see. How are you feeling? Okay, so, well, seems like gotcha. Obviously it's Friday, some of you are feeling tired, but yeah, Friday mood. Some were saying this morning at work, it's Friday, which actually is quite exciting. So yeah, lots of emotions there, motivated, a little bit tired, excited, curious. A lot of curious people always in this community. Awesome, brilliant, amazing. Imagine that person that feels brilliant. I need you today. Someone here very funny said, I felt like this morning actually when I was waking up. I was like, oh my God. So yes, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with each other how you're feeling as you enter the session. It's always so nice just to get it out of our system. So great. Okay, so the next question that I have for you is, we're starting to talk right now about product backlog. Yeah. Now, just to set the right frame for our session, why the hell is this important? Why is the product backlog something that it's important to you to the point that you are on a Friday in a meetup to learn about it? Why is it important for us as practitioners, the product backlog? Okay. Yes, so already some members of the community are starting to kind of like share the insight, and it's a little bit about the product backlog being a source of rhythm and transparency, bringing a sense of what is priority into the sprint. It also aligns all the work, right? Very important. One of you here are sharing something that we cannot forget. It should be the source of what are the right things to build. Yes, so super important. Feeding the team definitely is the backbone. It allows you to find value, clarity. Imagine like so many things, right? So I love one of you sharing here is the product recipe book. Yes, it's like, I think this is amazing. Like, thank you so much whoever shared that. I think that's a great metaphor just to see this, like, is the product recipe. Yeah, is that product recipe book so important, right? So yes, there you go. It also, some of you here is saying working on the right thing at the right time, minimizing waste, effort. Totally is yeah. So here you go, customer value. Some of you are also putting there. So thank you so much actually for sharing. So this is why mainly on Friday afternoon, we are all here. Yeah, we all identify that actually, even though we know the product backlog, it's important for all of these reasons. There are many challenges that we face in order to make it work, right? So what ideas can we get from each other so we make a better product backlog? Now, let's go to the point, and it's precisely that one. What are the challenges that you're facing as practitioners in this community when you get to work with your product backlog? Okay, and let's hear it loud as a community. What are some of the challenges? I'm actually going to share my challenge too, right here. So I think it's super important here. Yes, so clueless product owners. So sometimes our product owners, we need to support them better. Yes, or sometimes they're actually exposed to a business environment that is quite challenging and fast changing, and they don't even know what comes to be priority, or they don't get access to the customer information. So why sometimes it's a challenge for a product owners can have many whys or many factors. It's important to recognize. I'm going to make also.
Can somebody who's not speaking go on mute, please?
Yep, I'm gonna mute them all. Here we go. Okie dokie. And feel free, whoever wants to talk, to actually jump in, because remember that this is interactive. So conflicting customer values, totally, yes. not well-defined, prioritization, sizing, negotiating. Thank you so much. We're going to cover some of this. Inability to say no to stakeholders. Thank you. Actually, I didn't add a tool for it in this session, but I do have a tool, so I will run through it. So saying no. Perfect. That exact leadership have absolutely zero idea on how Agile works. Okay, so the thing of like sharing with our exec how this can work, right, for the teams. Too many things pulling you in different directions. So as you see, there's quite a lot of challenges, right, that you guys are pointed out here, and that is basically what we are partly going to then talk about today. So yeah, I'm actually very happy that that we got this, because actually covers some of the things that we're going to go through. Okay, so let's kick it out with the product backlog, and we're going to kick it off by basically setting up what I call the basics, right? Now, in a Scrum, when we talk about the product backlog, we are talking about that order and estimated list, okay, of the key, stories that we are going to work through in our sprint in order to satisfy our customer. This is already very controversial, as all of you know as Agile practitioners, because many of us know that sometimes in our backlog, not only stories, it's what we bring in, right? We have other things. We have requirements, we have enhancements, we have fixes, we have even technical legacy that we do have to introduce in that product backlog, because if you have been a product owner, you know that you are responsible not only of delivering the product, but of making sure that the product has the right architecture, has the right security, right, in order for it to come to market. And that means that sometimes within our product backlog, we need that to be, yeah. So that's already something that, as I mentioned from the beginning, you will always find sometimes between product owners, like this controversy if it's only supposed to have the user stories, of if we can include other things, right? Feel free there to share in the chat, what is your position about it and why, yeah? Or hop in if you want to. Mainly, it will cover everything that might needed to be needed for the release of that product. And that product has several sprints, okay, in which we work those key high priority things, and then we evolve to those that kind of like enhance that product that we are delivering until we finish what is come to be the release, yes. As you see, sometimes it's fully never completed, in a sense that many times your backlog will have to adapt to what comes to be the circumstances in which the product evolves and it's developed, right? And many of you can find a ring on this when we talk about sometimes you are developing, let's give an example, a community, yeah, digital community, because the business is looking to create some profit for it. And then in the middle of it, there's changes in the executives and the strategy that they're planning for the business, and then they think that that community has to have some add-ons, etc. So then the backlog has to be adapted, right? So we have never complete information, yes, as product owners of that, how really that truly that backlog goes. And even when we build it with our team members, with our development team, and we integrate the executive and even the customer in that co-creation of the backlog, it will have changes, right? So here, the challenge is not the change, is for us to have the right change management tools at hand. So when change comes, we pick those tools and we deal with it the best way we can. Yes, because it's going to happen. Now, the other key thing usually we have in the product backlog is whatever goes in there, those items, whichever type it is. As I mentioned, it has a good description. Yes, so we're going to run through, the common structure for our user stories and acceptance criteria. This is what is the limited view of the product backlog. Okay, this is what we call the basic definition of a product backlog in a Scrum. Now we're going to go into the reality, right? Because all of us have been a victim of reality. Yeah. Now, Who owns the product backlog? Just basics once again to set the scene for what we're going to be talking. Well, obviously it's the product owner. He is the one that owns this backlog. And when we say that is the product owner who owns it, what do we mean? Well, basically we mean that it's him or her who drives the product success. He's supposed or she's supposed to have the up-to-date knowledge of customer needs. He or her is who creates and communicates that product vision. Yes, what's the goal? Okay, he or her is the one that's motivating for that quality work. So this is already introducing some complexity in that artifact, technical artifact called the product backlog, because if it's led by a human being, right, that human being must have some capabilities, right, some even like leadership skills, some technical skills, right, to do and go about that job. And if not, it has to be well supported by its team, by its Scrum Master, by the organization, so he or she can thrive and achieve this, right? Because at the end, we're a Scrum team. We want to guarantee that success, right? But ultimately, the product backlog, it's owned by the product owner, yeah? He or she also creates and maintains the product backlog. And this is fundamental, because sometimes many of the issues that we have in actually rocking our product backlog is that we run into trouble to keep it updated, right? That grooming practice as a team gets to be quite challenging. And I don't know if some of you have faced this, especially nowadays with the pandemic. People want to zoom out, right? They don't want to be zoom in. They really want to, like have some space, right? So it makes it even sometimes a bit more challenging to have those grooming spaces in which we come together and maybe as product owner, I updated with you guys, with the development team, given an example, okay, here. The other thing is that usually the product owner should collaborate with the Scrum team and other stakeholders while doing this. And this is fundamental because some of the challenges that we face as practitioner with our product backlog is that each product owner has different personalities. There's product owners that when they are leading their product backlog, they integrate, right? Different team members, stakeholders, and even some of them go as far as co-creating with the customer, meaning making sure that they have the customer in the room while creating that backlog, which is not typical, okay? It only occurs in some organizations, but I have seen it, right? So here comes the challenge that some of you as practitioners might see, or even you as product owner might be your personality. Sometimes that integration, you do not achieve it or you don't see it, and this harms the product backlog, yeah? And ultimately, how it reflects those customer needs and also how it is the product of agreements, okay, across the organization, meaning it has the agreement of that development team and it has the agreement of those main stakeholders that are engaged ultimately with that product development. And that's what makes a successful product too, having the people that are going to be impacted by the product engage with it, yeah. And then, of course, is the one that participates in the key meetings, which a reminder for the product owners is going to be that sprint planning, review, and retro, and the daily scrums, they don't have to be there. They might be there, but they don't have to, okay? So may I ask, what are some of the characteristics of good product owners that you have seen that have helped your product backlog? Any of you wants to share? Yes. Thank you so much. The first one that came out was vision. This is so fundamental. We're just going to see as we move ahead that for a product backlog actually to be successful, there must be a product vision that drives it, guys. And this is where sometimes a problem begins. It's so challenging to get that product vision. So we're going to see right now some tools that can help us maybe get that product owner or get the organization and the team engaged with the building of the vision, and that then feeds into the product backlog and generates a little bit more of a consensus as we move with our sprint, okay? Super. Domain knowledge. Some of you are also pointing out to some of the challenges that we're facing. Sometimes we have product owners that know like what's the technical approach for the product, but they not necessarily have the domain knowledge in which of the product that they're developing, so you have product owners that might have been put in a project in a release for them to own, the creation of an e-learning platform, and it turns out that they have worked all their life in the area of technologies for manufacture, right? So they know the process of developing products, but this is like a domain that they're being exposed to, right? So having that complementarity within the Scrum team, right? Having people that can help in that gap, right? That can bring that knowledge and that technical. So we're also here seeing already that some of the challenges that we face when building the right that right product backlog and making that product backlog happen, meaning like helping, like really as a team achieving that as a product. Sometimes it's even an instructor thing. Sometimes within even the Scrum team, the problem is that we don't have all the different team members that we really need to make it happen, right? So let's see, ability to throw stuff out. Yes, good relationship with the stakeholders, able to clearly communicate what they want, trusting the team to find the how. Yes. Ability, relentless to pursuit of providing customer excellence. Totally, I've come across this challenge also. Good communicator, okay? Listening to feedback from the Scrum teams, and empathy, yeah, that ability to influence, solid product vision. So guys, something very important actually. I didn't put you in the mural, tools for influencing, product owners, tools for influencing, but now for those of you that share this challenge, I will add in the mural something from Kellogg School of Management that is a tool for supporting like the product owners influencing skills. So I didn't put it in the mural today, but I promise I will add it for those of you that are putting here empathy, influence, and that part, okay? Ability to understand their roles. Yes. Okay. So some of this, as you see, we can actually tackle, yeah, by exposing them and coaching them. And some of this actually are more require more tools. Okay. So let's begin with the basics. For those of you that actually put recipes or that like to see the overall thing, right? So how can we have, what are the basics to kind of like rocking that product backlog? Yeah, believe it or not, to have a product vision, you need to know your product customer. And this is something that those that have been product owners, those of you that have been Scrum Masters, those of you that have been executives, those of you that have been team members, sometimes have seen that doesn't happen, right? So we want to go, we want to release a product, we want to have a product vision, but we don't even know the customer, right? So key to actually have a good backlog is for that product owner and even for that development team, yeah, that Scrum team, to have some basic understanding, please, of their customer, of the product. And we're going to see some tools that help us with that. Then, of course, have a product vision for your sprint. Yes, have a lean, simple, easy to understand product vision that everyone knows what it is, okay? Not a manifesto of 20 lines. No, 2 lines top, even 1 line if you can't. What is that smart product vision that we are going to strive to achieve in this sprint and that we want to nail down? And then how does that look in terms of the work that we're going to do, okay, and that we're going to be accountable for? Yeah, so have a product vision. Second. Third, focus on that. Some of you said it already, yeah, the what and the why. Yeah, so it's not only here we go, we know our customer, here we go, we got the product vision, but make sure that everyone in the team understands that what and why. That means clarifying the chief product vision. We have the product visions, but then are we all understanding the same thing? Let's just recheck, right? Sometimes we don't take that pause. In my early times, I remember that I had great product owners I work with. They knew their damn customer perfect. They created a great vision, but it turns out that all of us went understanding something different from the vision. Right? So even then, when we were working through the stories, it got a little bit complicated. So the best product owners actually clarify with me when I was part of a development team what actually that vision entailed. They even asked me, you know, what do you understand from this now that we have achieved it as a team? Just once again, let's recheck. Okay, so that was actually amazing, right? So focus on that what and why and share it, right? Make sure that there's the right balance between what we call voice of the customer and voice of the business. Sometimes the product backlogs that are led by our product owners are highly representative of the voice of the business rather than of the customer, right? So encouraging and supporting our product owner of that key role that he plays in bringing the customer and in challenging the business, right? And letting them know that we are by them. Or if you are the product owners, having that courage of actually, as the ones that know the customer, standing up and sharing with your executive. And I know that this is very hard. Hence why I'm going to share the thing of the influencing. But it's so important for you to, you know, like try to share in the best way, given the type of executives that you have or stakeholders, you know, the why those stories that you think should go in are the right ones, right? Because at the end, you're the one that should know the customer. And this is information that gives you privilege and that other may not have. And that can allow you to make sure that the voice of the business doesn't step over what actually the customer wants. Right? And this is very tough. I'll give you an example. I had the opportunity to be part of a project in which, you know, they wanted to build this like online website to sell a package of online courses. Yeah. Sorry. Like I was on the ground interviewing the customers, right? I got all the information even from the surveys. So after I did, you know, like more than 150 interviews in which I heard the customers, right? And then I read the survey, I knew that they hated the idea of having a package of online courses because that wasn't what they wanted. They wanted other things, right? So even though my executives were asking me for that, I had to step and say, hey, I know you think as a business, this is what we should, but this is what data shows. This is what the customers are saying. These are the words. This is what they are saying. That won't work, you know? So providing that information then allows them to see, oh, well, yeah, you know, so, okay, this is already something that from the beginning is saying no, right? So why am I going to even test something that everyone says that hates it, that they don't even want it, right? We are not doing a right use of resources, right? So it is hard, but look for the data, make sure that you have the facts. And if you have the facts, you really have that customer information. Don't let your business lose time putting in the backlogs things that are not going to work. Yeah. Then remember to maximize the value for customers and your users. You all know this, but sometimes we forget it. And we know that in our product backlogs, we don't only have user stories, we have technical depths, we have many things that we have to do, as I mentioned at the beginning, but also keep the focus, right? Like, because sometimes we see, you know, in our backlogs, then a bunch of work only on technical depth and nothing, you know, nothing for the customer in terms of the features and everything that they need. So just keep that in mind too, yeah, for that not to happen, at least too often. Then let me just let someone here in. Super. Okay. Then keep the product backlog manageable. Also, I've been to what I call, you know, Agile wins. It's not Halloweens, but Agile wins. Like I come into a team and then I see 7 backlogs. I'm like, what is this? It is very scary, right? It's just like have one product backlog. Keep it manageable and simple. Don't get it too complicated, because also sometimes I see backlogs that have like 7 different labels for, you know, or a label within another label, etc. So just keep it manageable and easy. Okay, so this is something that we're going to discuss how that can look. Stick to one product backlog, as I mentioned. Integrate your development team on it. Some of you said it. Please, the development team are the ones that are going to make it happen. Then at the end, integrate them. Don't have stuff in your product backlog that people are not going to be able to do. Don't lie to yourself. I know we like to do that, but try to keep no, don't do that. Okay, then know what is in your product backlog too. This is the only way that you can set up strategies of how you can, you know, actually manage it better if you know what is there. If your product owner doesn't know what is there, try to bring him the information, you know, like as a Scrum Master or as development team, what is it that is in that product backlog that doesn't make sense? Yeah, guide him. Yeah, have some kindness with them if you see that they need that guidance. Make it visible. Make the product backlog visible, you know, in whichever tool that you're using, Jira, Trello, if you have it even in a wall, just make it visible so people can know what is there, and then move it into the sprint backlog and then move it across the sprint. Yes. Reorder continuously. Sometimes we only order when we come all together. Yes. And in that sprint 0 or in that sprint planning, we do a little bit more, but then we do not reorder across the sprint. No, things are going to change. Beware that that's going to happen, and that's your job as product owner. And if you're part of the development team, remind your product owner of the importance of this. Okay. And the final thing, as I mentioned, not everything has to be a user story in the product backlog. Yeah, especially if you're a product leader, you know that you have to sometimes work with technical depths, requirements, bug, architecture, security, performance improvements, and a whole bunch of other things. Yeah, what it's important is to keep that balance of making sure that you're still maximizing the value of the customer and that sprint given the context. Okay, so how's everyone until now? Anything here that anyone wants to debate? Let's see just very fast here. The chat, what we have. Let's just put everyone here. Okay. Okay, so some of you. What do you have? Multiple smaller products, okay? And one development team. Okay, so we're gonna go over these questions just in a second. Okay. Super. So pop it in there and we're gonna go to questions. Okay, so just the synthesis of this first part. By the way, guys, pop all your custom questions there. Know your customer so you can have from the start a good backlog. Set the vision, order stuff, integrate, yeah, team and stakeholders, maintain, okay, and keep improving it. Yeah, so those are simple things. Yeah, I just wanted to put in simple words for you to like get that across. Yeah, so let's go with the product vision. Okay, and some of you might have seen this already. It gets to be very tricky sometimes when we start with the product backlog. Typical structure for product visions when we are starting the dynamic, right? For who? The product. Yeah, so for who is the targeted customer? What is that opportunity or need? What is that product that we're going to give? What is that product type? Yeah, what is that key benefit? What is the primary competitor of it? Yeah, what is its primary difference? Yeah, so like the product vision, don't make it also like too long. Usually answering this gives you 2 lines. Yes, so it doesn't have to be this structure, but please keep the product vision smart, lean, small, and also something that is achievable within that sprint. Yes, and keep it very clear on what is the customer that for that product you're targeting. Yes, so you can work better as a team. Let's go now through very briefly the tools so we come back to the vision. Don't worry, we're going to come back to the vision. This is just the start. As I mentioned, something that many times happen when we're creating our product backlog is that we don't even have an idea of who the customer of that is. And this also applies to what we call internal teams that have internal customers. They work in a sprint and they have to create for their organization, you know, a new system, a new data package, you know, a new data product, right? Because we have teams that have external customers and internal customers. We have teams that only have external customers. We have teams that only have internal customers, right? So we have a variety of teams in Scrum, but ultimately they have a customer, right? So what we find ourselves sometimes is that our teams, as they begin even their sprint, yeah, and they start setting out, okay, what is it that's going to be the vision? They don't even know who's going to be the customer for that sprint. Okay, so reminding our teams, you know, like who is going to be that internal or external customer, or internal and external, whichever they have, right? Who's going to be that customer for our work? Yeah. And just let's remember, let's put that customer in that creation when we're creating that product backlog as a team, right? So what is it that the customer is needing? What is it that it wants from us? Yeah, what is that pain that we're going to resolve? What is the gains, the jobs to be done, right? So having that clear, we do not want to just put tasks, or because sometimes we say like features or whatever, but is it really features that we are having there? Is it really user stories, right? Because we see some funny stuff in the backlog, right? So let's make sure that whatever comes in the backlog is really rooted on jobs to be done, on pains or on gains that we are generating for our internal customers or external customers, or both. Yeah, that makes that product recipe that one of you shared that I loved. You said, you know, it's the product recipe book, right? That's what makes it like really knowing, right, that customer. So empathy maps can help you with that. Yeah. If not empathy map, maybe some of you have come across this great book that is called the Design Thinking Toolbox. Okay. In the Design Thinking Toolbox, you have something that is called the baskets, right? The baskets is a template that allows the team members to kind of like put all those user stories that they want to work with, but then embed them in a specific baskets. I'm going to show you how that looks, right? Some baskets are jobs to be done. Some baskets are pains. Some baskets are gains, right? And of course, each of this, then you put the user stories and it allows to see what's going to be the impact on the internal or external customer. Okay. So let me see if I can just very briefly show you here an example. So you can see that. So by the way, as I mentioned, that is available in the Design Thinking Toolbox book. There they have this template for the baskets, which allows us to make sure that the team members don't only have that idea of the, let me show you an example here, right? So these are baskets, right? So imagine that these are user stories, and then some baskets are jobs to be done, some baskets are gains, some baskets are pains, some are experiments that we need to do with that product, etc. Right? So it allows the team members to kind of cluster those user stories and start thinking about which are the ones that they will put ultimately in that product backlog, right? Because sometimes for a sprint in the product that they want to deliver, they are really going and have a focus on solving a pain rather than jobs to be done, for example, okay? So as I mentioned here, the product backlog, it's acquiring a customer centricity, right? Because it starts from the beginning with the understanding, either through empathy map or either through the baskets one, of what is it that I want to do for the customer? What's that value proposition that my sprint is going to deliver, right? So this is another example of the empathy map, right? So as I mentioned, the product owner meets with their team. They have that first understanding of the customer, which preferences changes, by the way, throughout time, and we have to keep updated so the product is relevant. So by doing this, you keep the product backlog relevant too, right? So once they know that, it's the time, right, which many of you already mentioned, of bringing in the vision. Yeah, what's going to be that product vision that satisfies that target group that we talked about, that target group which needs we know, okay? And which for this sprint, the part of the product that we're gonna deliver is this, that aligns with this business goal and that has this key factor of differentiation. Here, the product backlog, it's being highly strategic, right? Yeah, and once again, as you see, what feeds the vision is an understanding of this, right? So once again, rocking that product backlog, or really making it that a strategic business artifact, right, passes or goes through these the understanding of these key elements. Okay, so this is another tool that can help you. Other tool that many agilists use, and some of you might be aware of, is the user story maps, right? The thing that I have with user story maps is that sometimes if we jump directly into this tool while building our product backlog, we might forget the exercise of empathizing with the customer, the one that I shared with you before. So with my teams, I like to first ground us on the customer, ground us on the key business context, yes, that underlies the vision, which is this tool, right? And then we can make sure that we go then to the how, right? To the kind of like the practical thing, which is where user story maps always helps me a lot, right? In a sense that it helps build, what are those stories, right? It actually helps us have a conversation, as I mentioned, and also have kind of what should be that release strategy, what should be first, what should be second, what should be third, yes. And then identify what is going to be the scope for the minimum viable release, yes, or the product here, okay? So that's also important. Here you have another easy overview, right? So what is it that we're supposed to deliver? What's going to go in release 1? What's going to go in release 2? What's going to stay in that backlog, right? So the user story maps really allows us to then get that visual how we are going to achieve that, and what is it that we want to put in the backlog, and from the backlog move into the sprint backlog, yes, and get done for in the first sprint, second sprint, how many sprints we have, right? Because we divided them. Okay, let me show you another view of it, right? So I think I had another one here, and if not, don't worry, I'll share with you in the mural. In the mural, you have another one. I'll share just in a second. But as I mentioned, the user story maps can help you then kind of like ground what is it that then we're going to agree to put in that backlog, and then how do we want to distribute it, like in which sprints we do this first part, in which sprint we do this second part of the product, in which we do this third part of the product, right? So it allows us to kind of like do that. Okay, now all of you have faced then the problem, because sometimes the problem is not knowing the customer, having the product vision, getting the understanding of the context, and actually doing the user story map, because actually many agile teams are actually quite good at that, right? So, okay, so maybe then the problem is not there. The problem then comes into ordering that backlog, because then we're very good at, well, we know our customer, we know what's the product we know to deliver. But then we run into this challenge, and this one has been a big one for me, like how, after we have everything there in that backlog, do we really order this, right? Like, how do we order that work? Yeah, what criteria should we take into consideration? And as you know, this is pretty controversial. Like, there's some basic criteria that we're going to go through, but if you have team members, sometimes this tends to be controversial, right? Like, what's the right way to order the work for this product given the business context that we have, right? Especially if you are in businesses that are in transition, and there's many products that are being built at the same time, and they have tricky customers that have changing preferences. So this comes to be, very complex, right? So for ordering, you have many tools, and we're going to go through them some, right? So some people really like this customer-centric approach, of like kind of ordering what are those user stories that they're going to leave in that product backlog, and then move to their sprint backlog. And they like to discriminate the products according to what are those that are going to delight the customer, what are those that are going to satisfy the needs of their main customer, okay, and just leave in the button those that are unknown or their customer can be indifferent. And for this, usually making a use of what we call the Canna model, right, which is fantastic for us to ground that backlog, right, and from a customer-centric approach. Yeah, so this is one tool that can help you with that ordering. Now, besides that, some of the teams also explore, well, given this stories that we have, right, what is the return on investment that we can have on that? And this is also very tricky because sometimes as teams, we know what can be, or we can estimate, especially with the business analyst, what can be the value that a feature brings when incorporated, but it gets tricky when we really need to measure that return on the investment, meaning the cost, right? And this is a challenge that sometimes is faced in making that product backlog value view authentic, because sometimes we only associate the revenue that we estimate that those features that are in those product backlogs can bring, but we forget what is the cost. Yeah, and more important, we forget the shadow costs, right? So sometimes it's very clear that feature, you know, what are the materials or resources cost that it has associated, but we don't contemplate what we call shadow costs, right, which are the cost of delays, the cost of transactions, or what we call hidden costs, right? Because yeah, that gets to be quite tricky, right? And that also makes the session more tough in sense of like, well, it makes longer that product backlog generation or creation. Now, a piece of advice there is like, hey, you know, don't over focus when you want to order your backlog according to that return on investment only on the revenue or the value that you estimate can bring those features, but don't forget about the cost. Yes, don't forget about the cost. And when thinking about the cost, do not forget those shadow costs that you could have information about. Remember, you never have complete information when building your product backlog, so it's okay. You can adapt it and then reorder it as you go through the sprint and you discover. Yeah, but don't forget to go through that step. Okay, so that's another thing that can help you order. So not only what is the value to the customer with the kind of model, not only then this return on investment, okay, also sometimes the assessment of risk is used to also help in how you order that product backlog, right? So in that assessment of risk, you know, well, what is the probability of that we have associated to really achieving this specific user story that we have, and what is the impact that it have also in the product, yeah, and in the value that it can bring. So sometimes also it helps to order the user stories in your product backlog using as a criteria the risk. Yeah, what is the risk associated to that user story? Yeah, so not only what is its customer impact, what is its return on investment, but what are the risks associated to the execution of that user story by the team, right? And there's tools there that you have, you know, you have your risk matrix that allow you to see the threat levels, right? Depending on the likelihood and impact that it can have. So this is also a tool that can help you with that ordering thought. Then some people also, especially some product owners, like to think of the dependency and constraints while ordering those user stories with their teams and while creating that product backlog, right? And it's basically they see as they go through the user stories, right? Well, what are the constraints associated to this too? Okay, so do I have schedule constraints? Do I have resource constraints? Do I have external dependencies? Do I have functional dependencies? So also by looking at that, it helps them understand and order the stories. Yeah. By the way, associated to this too, some some product owners, what they check also while they are ordering the stories is the time or resource that that they will need for that specific user story. So it allows them also to order that, right? So here we go. Some tools that allows you to map this better and see it is what we call the spider, right? The dependency spider. So some of you might have said with your product owners while doing your product backlog, and you say, well, let's order these according to the dependencies, but having it in mind, it turns very tricky. So what you see sometimes is a Scrum team, we come together, we see it, and we overview what's the dependency spider for this user stories that we want to get through. And this also helps us organize in that product backlog or order what should be done and first and what should be done second. Of course, some of you actually have a matrix that combines different criteria, and this is only one of them. But as I mentioned, this is another thing that helps you order that product backlog, because behind a good sprint is a strong product backlog. Yeah, one that is customer centric, which vision is clearly understood and it's grounded, and that is properly ordered, yeah, and clear and visible for the team. Yeah, so that's what is kind of behind this. You have also kind of like the dependency maps that also allows you to see, you know, in the sprints as we move. Yeah, and we work on the different stories and the different features. In this case, what are the dependencies that we have, right? And this allows then also to do a better ordering of those stories. Let me admit this here. Okay, super. Okay, so welcome to the new team members. All right. The other thing that sometimes also allows, of course, and has to be contemplated when ordering that product backlog, just to make sure that it's grounded, is the part of integrating properly your team and your stakeholders, right? As product owners, sometimes you might have the tendency to want to do this on your own. This shouldn't be the case. You have to integrate your team in the whole process. Some of you that have more experience in Agile know that the majority of the time when you have a good Scrum team, they go together in that product backlog, and that's how it should be, right? Now, sometimes because we're in a rush, we forget to actually integrate the stakeholders. Not so much the team, but sometimes the stakeholder. And I meet with this, for example, the executive sponsors or those line managers or directors that are associated to the product, right? And then it turns out that we gave priorities to something in the backlog that clashes with what they thought, right? So this generates delays in the sprint, because then it disrupts the sprint sometimes, because then this execs or this stakeholders, you know, come into the sprint at some point and say, no, this should be changed, right? So the whole team is like, well, we were working this rhythm with this rhythm, and now we have to change the rhythm. So do please remember, when building your product backlog, to integrate your different stakeholders, right? And to be clear, you know, what of those stakeholders, you know, who of them are the key players that you really have to share that work to be done in that product backlog with, who aren't. Yes, because you don't need to integrate every single stakeholder. You need to integrate the key players, right? So those that have high powers and that have the most interest on this. And also, you know, does that backlog really reflects the action planning that you have with them? Yeah. Does that really reflect what you guys agree are the opportunities and the threats to the products, the things that are going to leverage your strength and that are going to reduce your weaknesses as a business, as you position and you go through that work of the product with them, right? So does that really obeys to the strategy that that you're working on as a business, to the behavior that you want to promote in the customer for that product, etc., right? So have that stakeholder approach, right, to that ordering and of your product backlog, right? So key questions there when you are doing that ordering of the product backlog are those, right? Are these features that we have as high priority, right, that are a must, that really we need to get across? Are those the ones that in that discussion with my key players, right, leverage the opportunities, that reduces the threats, minimizes those weaknesses, leverage on the strength, aligns with our strategy, promotes the customer behavior that we want, really gather or help us gather the information that we need, really will help the product as we wanted, with the quality that we wanted for the customer. So those are things that, you know, you have to ask as you are ordering that product backlog. So the product backlog is a process of a lot of questions, right? And of seeing it from a different approaches. So then you can really just kind of like get just an acceptable minimal thing initially, right? Because it doesn't have to be perfect, because you don't have complex, complete information. What you do have to make sure is to reduce what we call preventable failures. And preventable failures is not looking through this minimal criteria that we're talking about when approaching that backlog, right? Then the other thing is make sure that in that product backlog, yes, you have, and this is supposed to be good definitions, good definitions for those user stories, and that you have clear acceptance criteria. This is something that you can actually polish when you do your sprint planning and you create your sprint backlog. Yeah, this is true. Like sometimes, you know, in that first product backlog, right? In that first backlog items, you necessarily don't have those perfect user stories. You actually polish them sometimes in that sprint planning, but you know, it's good to actually, when you start this part and when you select what are those features or what are those user stories that are going to come in to the sprint backlog and into the sprint from the product backlog, just to have them properly structured. You know, so the user stories structure, yeah, as a product owner, I want this, so that, blah, blah, or as a, whatever is your customer, you know, as a Series A founder, I want a community in which I can share posts and learnings so that I can build a network. I don't know. So just make sure that, and this is the case of a community, right? You have other things that you might be building, a checkout payment page, yeah, something, or a landing page for a product, whatever you are doing there. Just make sure that you have a user story that is properly created, right? So you have here, right, as the actor, yeah, or the user role, I want the key requirement that you want then, and please just make it smart, yeah. And then finally, this is where sometimes my teams, and this has taken a lot of work, and actually we're still not good at it. We have to keep improving it, to be very honest, is the thing of the acceptance criteria, right? So not only getting to that point in which you are able to write properly that description, but actually that you are able to nail down what are the acceptance criteria, right? Because sometimes here team members get a little bit cheeky, in a sense that they put acceptance criteria that sometimes don't stretch too much, right? And so you have to make sure that those acceptance criteria are the done for the customer of that specific feature or user story. And that can be tricky because sometimes we just want to do stuff, right? So that discussion of what should be the acceptance criteria, what is really done for our customer through this specific user story or feature that we are going to get across, is important. And it's hard, but it's something that you got to go through to make sure that you have that good product backlog and those user stories that come into your sprint backlog that are robust, that are strong. Yeah. So other things that you might see sometimes is the tool, of course, of evaluating the complexity, right? Like of those stories, which one is most uncertain, which one will require me to engage the most stakeholders, which one will require the most effort for my team. So that also allows to do an ordering of the features or of the user stories that you have in your product backlog. So that's another criteria. Regarding the definition of ready, some of you might have come across INVEST, right? And it's basically, that those user stories are strong enough when, they're independent, they're really valuable, they're small enough. And this is always a discussion. And I think some of you were already sharing some ideas there in the chat of this challenge. They can be negotiable, you can estimate them, right? And finally, you can actually test them during your sprint or get them across. So the invest criteria is something that some of you might have already used also to make sure that product backlog has good definitions of done associated to those features and those stories. Okay, so that's basically some of the ideas that I wanted to share with you and to open the conversation, of course. So if it's okay with the community, could we then just open it up for your thoughts, the things that you didn't agree, the things that you thought are important for us to know and learn from each other and are not here?
Can you just quickly jump back to the slide with the back of the card? I just didn't get a chance to read through that. It was like 2 or 3 back.
Okie dokie, let me go here. You mean the acceptance criteria?
Right before the acceptance criteria, there was maybe, it said back of the card.
Okay. Go there very fast. Okay.
I think, yeah.
This one.
I think one more after that. No.
This one?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
No problem at all. Yeah, so maybe some of you actually can share how you have tried to tackle the part of the acceptance criteria, because I find here that sometimes the difficult thing is that we stretch as a team just enough, to make sure that that feature really is delivering for the customer.
I think some teams have a challenge differentiating between, acceptance criteria and a full test plan, right? So, there's like, is it good enough? And then there's also, and again, it, as I say, it all depends, right? So sometimes your acceptance criteria is your test plan. I mean, it could be like validate new table exists, great, done. Or it could be, validate new table exists and test in 32 different ways, in depth using different devices. So that could be the more in-depth test plan. So I don't know if other people have had that challenge with teams trying to put a whole test plan here, or not having enough, or using this as like user acceptance test.
So in terms of testing and user acceptance testing, it's when you're doing an agile transformation piece, and I enjoy that part when I'm growing the company into adapting lean agile ways of working per se. The acceptance criteria, what happens is a product owner perhaps puts in a functional requirement or a business requirement, and the Scrum team then dissects it into user stories and then goes back to the product owner saying that this is the acceptance criteria. And based on that, it becomes a general knowledge of what is required by the Scrum team, and it becomes really lean. You don't need a business analyst to just come in and write user stories. But on the other end as well, when you're doing acceptance test driven development, or a test driven development in some sort of way where you are, fail pass refactor sort of a way of working, it becomes easier when you say that instead of doing end-to-end test scenarios the way we used to do it in waterfall way of working, you've got regression testing happening all the way, but your development is happening in a test-driven development way of working. So it becomes easy, and you actually find really less bugs or defects in production. I think I'm not sure if I've answered your question really well, but I think thinking more in that or thinking that question more into a lean agile way of working, it becomes a different perception rather than having a scenario-based testing in that way.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've seen actually the first case that you mentioned, sometimes it's pushed back to the product owner. Yeah, for him to just double check that part, because even sometimes with the business analyst, we have a problem, right, of being too business oriented, acceptance criteria not meeting the customer that acceptance criteria. So we have had that issue too. Yeah, but I also share what our colleague mentioned, like it has been easier for us when we just have testing like acceptance criteria that are associated to the testing part. Yeah.
I've developed, if we can perhaps, if the wider audience is okay, I've done something around design thinking, product management around, and very quickly I can share something, but we can't record it because I've done that for my company.
Then let me
And
just put the pause here very quickly.
yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for that sharing too. I think something that you're pointing out is something that we previously also discussed, the importance of integrating to our agile ways, systemic thinking and design thinking, because it allows us to do the right thing. Yeah, agile can help us do it the right way. I think this is something that some of you even have shared. We had here a community member that he has had like more than 30 years working in agile, and I think those were some great lessons from him. He said, like, agile can help us do the things the right way, but when we talk about doing the right thing, let's contemplate, design thinking, systemic thinking, to really bring that customer in, to really go deep into what is it that we want to do. And thank you also for bringing the wireframing and the prototyping. Something that I've seen in the case of my teams is that since they are using wireframing, it has allows us to save time, right? In a sense that it really allows us to check with all the stakeholders their expectations properly, and to put with the and to build with the customer something that it's better for them, because they from the start with the wireframe allows us to know what we have to take off and what we have to keep, for example. Yeah, so thank you so much, Mahat. So anything else anyone wants to share here with the community, especially on this topic that we want to improve our practice on?
I've got one question, Natasha, Neeraj here. Obviously not for you, but for the community, basically. So generally, see, the product owners obviously are from the business and the stakeholder side, and they themselves have so much confusion in prioritizing. Although we are, n number of times somehow trying to tell them this is not how it should be done, but it's a very, very sensitive and a very, fine line, because they are your customers. End of the day, they are the important stakeholders, and it's very challenging explaining them how the product backlog overall needs to be managed and maintained. So any suggestions or tips from the guys wherein they do not feel bad, but also we are able to convey our message that it's not going the way it should? So it's an open question for anyone to input on that, basically.
Don't overthink it is the first thing. Build something. If you get stuck in trying to make a decision, you'll never get anything done. Your intention is to deliver something. Even if it's wrong, deliver something, and then you can make decisions from there. And it doesn't really matter if it's a technical or business individual. Like, it's insignificant. Someone owns the priorities, right? And if they don't know how to prioritize, that's okay. Your job is to give them feedback and shorten that feedback loop. So build something. Even like I said, even if it's wrong, even if you sink several $1 million into it, or whatever, unit of measure you want to use, start somewhere, and don't get hung up, because then you got people who are terrified to make decisions about what's the best product to build. You don't know until you try.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, Neera, and anything else regarding us, that question that you had of how to share with the product owner the feedback also, right? That's what you meant, because it has happened to me that it depends also on the product owner. There's some product owners that are like very open in a sense that they tell you, just, yeah, be blunt, guys, and there are others that, as Brian actually mentioned, it's better to build the stuff quickly And then when they see that it might not work, that's already the way in which you can communicate it. Yeah. So it would also sometimes depend on that dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, guys. So anything else that you want to share as a community? Would you like to just have 5 minutes to mingle? I'm more than happy to maybe break you out into random rooms, and you have those 5 minutes to mingle, and then we might come all together and we just check out with your key lessons. Yeah, if it's okay. How does that sound for you? Because I want you to meet other people. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. How does that sound? Sure. All right. So top 5 minutes for you just to share with each other. It's gonna be big breaker rooms. I'll assign you automatically. There we go. I'll open up for you. You can go and have a nice quick conversation. You never know. There's so many things that have a spark out of this community. Then hopefully you meet someone new. Super, super. Everyone's joining there and having the opportunity, maybe there to meet new people. All right. All right. Viviana, Michael, Tomas, everything going well with your connection? Should I move you? Let me know if you're having any trouble to join the room. Okay. Logan. Okay, super. Maru, don't worry. I will share the all the material and also the content. Yes, through the meetup, through an email, and it will be also available in YouTube. I will get back to you with an email with everything. Don't worry. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, super. So he will also contribute to some of its content. Okay. All right. Okie dokie. Sounds good. Okie dokie.
Thanks very much, Natasha.
No, a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I hope it's useful. We will put all the content for everyone just to, if it can help a little bit in your practice. It's just little bites that we have always to share with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting. Thank you very much.
No problem. And we also will share the feedback from the community on their challenges and on their best practices, because some of them share their best practices also. Okay.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Okay. Okay, so Maru, I will put it in the Mighty Networks. For sure, I will do it there. Okie dokie. So I think we have 1 minute left for everyone to come in also. Good night, Ahmad. Thank you so much for coming. Amazing to have you guys. Okie dokie. Okay. All right, I'll see you tomorrow, Matt. We have a session tomorrow. Thank God. Yeah, I have the baby all well, so I'm ready. I'm ready now for our sessions. Okay. Logan, Michael, Terrence, are you okay? Bringing in our team. Okay. Let's bring everyone in then. Okay. All right, so that was fast, but hopefully you just got to see new faces in your Friday.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good.
All right, awesome. So do you meet someone new at least?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we had a few discussions. Yeah.
All right, so that's actually what make Agile is so great, that they create community, and that community knowledge makes us stronger. So guys, have a wonderful Friday. Thank you so much for coming. Let's keep connected and let's keep sharing. It's been super useful always, these things. It helps us do our work better. Yeah. So
Right.
have a wonderful Friday. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
That's
Thanks.
very good.
Can I
Bye.
come every Friday?
You can come to all our sessions. You can lead one session too. If you're interested in leading a session, guys, let me know, and I'm more than happy to set up everything for you, and then you can share your knowledge with us, please. Yes.
I wouldn't mind. I
What's
can
the
try
date
that.
next week, Friday?
So you can just send me a message in the meetup, and I help you set up everything. Yeah. So you can.
What's the date? What's the date next Friday for it?
Yeah. So I think next Friday we don't have any sessions. So if any of you have something that you want to share, let us know. Yeah, and I'll put it there in the meetup.
Okay, so when is it then again?
Tomorrow we have one session. I think you can share. You can check all the sessions there in the meetup. All the sessions that are coming.
Tomorrow you have a session.
Huh?
Tomorrow you have a session.
Tomorrow we have a session, but it's more on measurement. Yeah, that one is on measurement.
That one's more fun.
Yeah, that's fun. All right, guys. Happy Friday. Love.
Yeah, great weekend, everyone.
Great
Thank you,
weekend.
Natasha. That was very good.
A pleasure to meet you.